Hello everyone and welcome back to Alternative Apex Project Pinnacle here for round number 11, the penultimate race of the 2026 Formula 1 season. We are here at the US Grand Prix West at Willow Springs Raceway for what will hopefully be a wonderful setup for a wonderful finale in this season. A big bombshell dropped, though, before we could even get to the racetrack on Friday, and that is Max Verstappen will be joining Mercedes for 2027, and he will be partnering Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli will be staying at the team, which of course means that George Russell is out, and his future is very much unknown, with reports of him still being discussions with the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull at this point in time, as they try to rush together a deal for next season. But this Max Verstappen news is absolutely incredible. It's a 5-year deal for those two partners to get together. And it's not strictly Formula 1. Whilst it's for 5 years, it will not be only a Formula 1 deal. Potentially lots of options here for both parties to race in the World Endurance Championship at the Nordschleife all the way around the world, without Verstappen being strictly stuck in his Formula 1 seat, with Mercedes reportedly offering him the chance to choose when he wanted to race in Formula 1 and when he didn't. So, of course, for 2027, we know Verstappen will be driving for Mercedes in F1, but beyond that, it could be elsewhere, or it could be in Formula 1. We really don't know, so I imagine that is something that will keep us on our toes for the rest of the coming years of this championship. Who knows what may be on the horizon, but one thing we do know that is certainly on the horizon, and that is the US Grand Prix West, and we are ready to start sprint race number 1 here, the title fight. It's Antonelli versus Russell, with Norris still on the sidelines. Who will take the early advantage here? Let's find out in the first sprint race. At the rear of the field then for the first sprint race, no wildcards left to be used, so it's Gabriel Bortoleto on his Michelin tyres at the rear of the field in his 11th position. Just ahead of him on the starting grid, though, we see the Ferrari of Lewis Hamilton. Disastrous performance from the veteran with just 2 Grand Prix left in his career. If he does lose a place in this race, he will be out and will not be starting this Grand Prix. Ahead of him, it is the Cadillac of Valtteri Bottas. After a solid drive last time out before having some late issues, he will look to try and get some points on the board here for Cadillac in their second of 2 home Grand Prix. Ahead of him, Esteban Ocon in the Haas, with Lance Stroll for Aston Martin lining up just next up on the road. He, of course, is already confirmed for next year, as is Ocon and the likes of Bottas. Max Verstappen next up on the grid, and we do now know where he will be for next year. Just 2 races left for him and the team that he won 4 World Championships with, and not a great showing for them on the Friday as he lines up behind the Cadillac of Sergio Perez, who in fairness put in a very strong performance indeed. Carlos Sainz there for Williams, bouncing back on a track that suits that car a little bit better after a recent slump in performance. Oliver Behrman put in a cracking lap on a Friday. He'll be lining up 3rd place on the grid with just 2 races left for him in partnership with the Haas team. On the front row of the grid, Lando Norris, the podium last time out after starting from pole position, looking to try and take a back-to-back pole position here with George Russell, the man in of the moment there, leading the championship by just 4 points. He will line up on 1st position for this first sprint race. The revs rise then as the lights come on, and we are racing and are underway for lap number 1 in sprint race number 1 here. It's Russell that will lead the field into the first corner, and behind her that's going to be close between Behrman and Norris as they come out through turn number 1. It is Norris leading ahead there of Behrman in the battle for P2, as down the inside immediately Valtteri Bottas in a Cadillac which looks relatively quick here this weekend, making the pass on the Haas of Esteban Ocon as we head now up into this tight and twisty section of the lap, a track which has some very high speed corners throughout the majority of it here, but it is Russell leading Norris and Behrman there, behind them Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen as they come weaving back down through the slightly slower speed section of the lap, but out into the high speed, high energy corners of this lap, and Norris is losing a little bit of time there, as is Behrman behind him. Could there have been some drama here? Norris is coming into the pit lane, so there was damage on the McLaren, and there is damage on the Haas. Both drivers into the pit lane here on lap number 1. Perez is now up into 3rd place, but immediately he's coming to attack from Max Verstappen to the inside here. Perez holds on for now, though, these 2 former teammates back at Red Bull. Now, of course, well, for now at least, both of them looking to move on. Perez at Cadillac and Verstappen at Red Bull for not much longer. Although he also doesn't want to be in this 4th position much longer, as he's looking once again to attack the Cadillac into turn number 1. To the inside, he goes a little bit tighter to the apex, and that's going to give him the run on corner exit to sweep around the outside and up into 3rd spot for the Dutchman, as now Hamilton sits in 7th spot ahead of Ocon. Bortoleto is in the 9th position. Lando Norris sitting 10th at the moment in the final qualifying in spot. And Oliver Bearman, despite putting in a brilliant one-lap performance, is looking set to fail to qualify unless he can put up some incredible final few laps here in this sprint race as they head down the main straight once more here. In sprint race number 1, it is Bottas battling away with Lewis Hamilton into turn number 1, and it will be Bottas that will hold on the outside line there. Hamilton disappointing on Friday, looking somewhat better though today, as he looks a bit racier and challenging Valtteri Bottas for that 6th position. For now, as we see down the main straight, we've got a battle. Here we go. It is Lance Stroll versus Sergio Perez. Perez looking to lose another position here. He'll certainly be hoping not to, as Lance Stroll looks down the inside there, sends it deep, and will get that position away from the Cadillac. And that is Lance Stroll up into 4th position here, as behind them Bottas is continuing to fend off the Ferrari of Lewis Hamilton this one. So Cadillac not doing too badly at the moment, 5th and 6th for them, as we come to the final corner of this sprint race number 1, and it's George Russell who will head towards the line here. It is going to be a critical pole position in this title fight. George Russell will win sprint race number 1 just ahead of Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen in 3rd position. Behind them Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez there. Side by side to the line though, it looks as though it's going to be Bottas and Hamilton. Bottas does just hold on, Ocon holding on to Lando Norris as well in that battle for 8th position, but the final qualifying in spot will go to the Brazilian, and it will be Audi back in a Grand Prix after missing it entirely at Watkins Glen. And for Gabriel Bortoleto, it comes home in the 10th position. So George Russell then taking pole position here for this Grand Prix. That could prove critical in his title fight with teammate Antonelli. Antonelli will be going in sprint race number 2, which means at best he will be lining up on the front row alongside his teammate there and could keep him busy on race day. Behind Russell in that sprint race, Carlos Sainz stayed quite tight to him at the end there, looking pretty quick, as did Max Verstappen. Lance Stroll 4th spot, ahead of Sergio Perez. The 2 Cadillac cars, their 5th and 6th position, means they'll be starting up 9th and 11th for the Grand Prix on Sunday. Hamilton just behind them in 7th, Ocon 8th. Lando Norris, the outside possibility of him winning this Drivers' Championship, it looks to be over now. He comes home in 9th spot. Of course, he's still in the Grand Prix, but he's going to have a very, very impressive race if he wants to come back from that position. Gabriel Bortoleto taking the final position there after Oliver Bearman, heartbreak for him, damaging his front wing on contact with Lando Norris on the opening lap there. He comes home 11th spot and will not be in the Grand Prix despite putting in such a brilliant lap in Friday qualifying. Now, as we look on to the 2nd sprint race here, at the back of the field, we have the Alpine of Franco Colapinto. He was the slowest man on Friday, and another disappointing performance from the Alpine team, especially over 1 lap on those Michelin tyres, really not helping them out there, as the Goodyears have been clearly the better 1-lap tyre this season. Ahead of him on the grid, we see the Racing Bulls KTM there in the penultimate race. They'll be known as that name. It is Liam Lawson there, with Nico Hulkenberg just ahead of him, looking to make it 2 Audis in this Grand Prix, although he'll have to fight hard for it at the moment. He is in a position to qualify, though. Ahead of him, it is the lead Alpine on the starting grid here of Pierre Gasly, looking to finally get their first points on the board since their home Grand Prix at Le Mans. Fernando Alonso there, not quite as quick as his teammate was over 1 lap, looking to try and have a bit more pace here in his sprint race, though, looking to gain some places off the start. Isaac Hadjar there just ahead of him. Red Bull Ford looking set to retain him for next season, with all but confirmed for him in that seat next season. Ahead of him, it is Charles Leclerc in the lead Ferrari, looking to try and make some moves as well here, but again, disappointing performance from that team, as Arvid Lindblad is ahead of him on the starting grid after a very impressive lap by the young English driver there. Ahead of him, it is the Williams of Alexander Albon, the tie driver there for Williams, trying to back up his teammates' strong performance in that first sprint race. But on the front row of the grid, we've got Oscar Piastri. After his win last time out, he'll be lining up 2nd, but on pole position on a day in which Mercedes have looked to be the team to beat, it is Antonelli who will lead us away in sprint race number 2. The revs rise then as the lights come on, and we are racing, and we're underway for the 2nd sprint race of the day here. It's Antonelli that will lead us down towards turn number 1. hoping to avoid any lap 1 dramas here today. It's Antonelli ahead of Piastri, Albon, Lindblad in 4th spot, just ahead there of Charles Leclerc and Isaac Hadjar sweeping through into turn number 2. This vastly long right-hand curve. These drivers pushing to the absolute limit of their cars here, and it will be really straining their necks by the end of Sunday, as we see Leclerc on the tail of Lindblad, not quite able to make a pass up in there. Hadjar in that group of drivers, as well as behind them you can see a battle going on. That it looks to be Pierre Gasly in that scrap, as Leclerc can maintain that position over Isaac Hadjar. And now, once again, he can look to attack the back of the Racing Bulls KTM of Arvid Lindblad, the Monegasque driver, back on track now and trying to move forward. At the moment, in the final qualifying in spot, it is Liam Lawson there in 9th spot. Nico Hulkenberg again looking like he might just miss out on a Grand Prix start. As up at the head of the field, it is Antonelli that will lead us through the final corner here on the first lap here in sprint race number 2. It is Antonelli out front for now, as Lindblad still holding on to that 4th spot for now, but you can see the lack of power there. He's feeling the pressure into turn 1 as we've got 2 battles going on at once. It's Leclerc up in to the 4th position as Fernando Alonso moves into 6th spot as well. Synchronised moves from those 2 drivers, as it is Leclerc will be driving Alonso's car next season. Alonso looking to the outside now to try and make this a double overtake here on the opening few corners of this lap. To the inside now, can he make a move stick? They're not quite able to make it happen. In fact, Hadjar is fighting back in his particular battle, and the Frenchman looking to make the move happen, but not quite able to do it. It is now Leclerc ahead of Lindblad, Alonso, and then Hadjar in that group. But up at the front of the field, it has been dominant performance there from Antonelli through the final corner in the 2nd sprint race. It is going to be Andrea Kimi Antonelli that will line up alongside his teammate on the front row. He wins sprint race number 2. Oscar Piastri come home in 2nd position there. Albon fighting on for 3rd position for now, at least, as Leclerc is right on his tail. And it is Albon through the final corner now. And to take this final position in this race, it is going to be Albon ahead of Leclerc at the back of the pack. You can see they're continuing to battle it out there. Drag race to the line. Lindblad beats out Alonso. As here we see Gasly just barely ahead of Lawson, and Nico Hulkenberg will sadly once again miss out on a Grand Prix start for Audi. So Antonelli makes it an all-Mercedes front row lockout then for this Grand Prix around Willow Springs, and it will be Piastri lining up alongside the Williams of Carlos Sainz on the 2nd row of the grid. Albon came home 3rd there, so a strong showing from the Williams team over those 2 sprint races. Leclerc 4th, ahead of Arvid Lindblad. Fernando Alonso in 6th spot, ahead of Isaac Hadjar. Pierre Gasly in 8th position, and Liam Lawson makes it both Racing Bulls KTMs on the grid for this race here on Sunday. Hulkenberg and Colapinto, the 2 drivers to miss out on qualifying from this 2nd sprint race. And now it's time to turn our attention to the starting grid for the Grand Prix here, the main event. After this one, there shall be only 1 race left in the season, and at the rear of the field it is Gabriel Bortoleto. For Audi, at least, they've got some representation on the grid, though, this weekend. Ahead of him, it is the Racing Bulls KTM of Liam Lawson there, as he will be lining up there just behind Lando Norris, a man in need of a very good result, and sadly for him, that's not what he got from his sprint race, down on 17th position on the starting grid. Ahead of him, it is the Red Bull Ford of Isaac Hadjar there. He will be looking to make some progress up the order, with that Ford engine struggling just a tad around this racetrack. He has at least been out-qualified by 1 of his junior teammates. Esteban Ocon next up there for the Ferrari-powered Haas team. Pierre Gasly, the sole Alpine on the grid, with a strong drive in his sprint race and showing that there is some performance still in that car despite its seeming drop-off over this season so far. Lewis Hamilton next up there for the Ferrari team. He lines up there just ahead of the Alpine in his penultimate Grand Prix in Formula 1. Fernando Alonso, another man in his penultimate Grand Prix here, and he will be lining up just ahead of his old sparring partner, Lewis Hamilton. Ahead of them both, though, it is the Cadillac of Valtteri Bottas, an all-Cadillac 6th row to the... Sorry, not 6th row to the starting grid. It's a Cadillac on the 6th row for Valtteri Bottas, but the other one on the 5th row after a very strong performance from Perez. But between the 2 of them, it is Arvid Lindblad there in the highest starting of the Racing Bull KTM cars, and the 2nd highest Ford-powered car on the starting grid. There is the aforementioned Valtteri Bottas there. He lines up in the 9th position on this starting grid. As ahead of him, we have Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari. putting on a lot of pressure in that race, and again, not quite having the optimal pace, but still in the mix towards the front of the field. Lance Stroll, strong drive from the Canadian driver, as he will be partnered by Charles Leclerc next year, those two lining up alongside each other on the starting grid here. Alexander Albon there for Williams, just ahead of the both of them. Williams looking to return a bit to their form that we've been missing in a previous couple of races. Max Verstappen just ahead of him in the 5th position on the starting grid, with the 4th position going to Oscar Piastri, the lead McLaren here today, but McLaren not quite having the speed that they showed previously at the Watkins Glen Raceway, so it could be a troublesome race for them. Carlos Sainz will be starting this race in the 3rd spot as he looks to add another podium to his collection this season, but the front row, it is all Mercedes. 2nd place is the man, 2nd in the championship, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, but on pole position, the man that leads the way in the championship with just 2 races left with the Mercedes team. It is George Russell. He will lead them away from pole position here in the US Grand Prix West. The revs rise then as the lights come on. We are racing and are underway for the US Grand Prix West at Willow Springs Raceway into turn number 1. It's the 2 Mercedes cars that lead comfortably there on this spread out starting field. They're all pretty much single file at the front of the field, but then in the mid-pack you see them start to bunch up just a tad. It's Russell, Antonelli, Sainz, Piastri in that leading quartet there. Behind them Verstappen in the 5th spot. It's Sainz feeling the pressure though at the moment for his 3rd position. Piastri right on his tail, not quite close enough and unable to make the move just yet here. Albon, 7th spot just ahead of Leclerc. As you see a battle there, that looks as though Alonso battling away with Lewis Hamilton in that scrap. As we see them do battle also in that pack, we have Valtteri Bottas ahead of Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, Isaac Hadjar all the way outside the points at the moment here, just ahead of the Audi of Gabriel Bortoletto. He's made a couple of spots here off the start. Norris, though, is still stuck down towards the rear. But up at the head of the field, though, it is the 2 Mercedes cars looking comfortable out front here. It's Russell leading Antonelli and Carlos Sainz in 3rd spot, who is still just clinging on to that 3rd position. Piastri has fired his tyres up quickly and is pressuring that Williams as they head down towards turn number 1. Once again here, not quite close enough to make a manoeuvre happen here, as we do potentially have a battle going on for 2nd position. Antonelli not quite staying with his teammate. Kimi struggling a tad here in the early stages of this race, and he's feeling the pressure from Carlos Sainz, the man who sits 4th in the championship. He will be looking to try and make something happen as they head down the main straight. Piastri in this mix as well. Sainz and Piastri battling it out for their position in the Drivers' Championship into turn number 1. Sainz to the inside. Will he be able to make this move stick? Piastri is looking to try and pick up the scraps as dirt does go flying. Antonelli will lose the spot to Sainz, but hold on to Oscar Piastri, who I believe may have been the one throwing up that dirt there in the background. Verstappen now on his tail. Stroll and Albon in that mix as well. Leclerc not too far back either as they head up into this tight and tricky part of the lap. This is where the cars are really tested at slow speed, and that is perhaps where the Williams will struggle just a little bit more here. But Carlos Sainz is clearly not struggling at the moment. He has not just passed Antonelli, but he's now reeled in Russell for the lead of this race. He's on the tail of him as they head down the main straight here. Antonelli in the mix as well. We've got Piastri and Verstappen into the pit lane. There's been drama between the McLaren and the Red Bull, and it's an awful day for McLaren, as now he will be tumbling down at the order here, and that is really dreadful for them, as Antonelli has repassed Sainz in the meantime for that 2nd position. Stroll up into 4th spot now ahead of Alexander Albon, and Stroll, you have to say, putting in a solid ending to this season. A man who has been a bit under the radar this season, but still ahead of his teammate on points as they head down the main straight here. Leclerc is looking to take away that 4th position though, and you can see the power of the Ferrari just a little bit better than the Honda power unit there in the back of the Aston Martin. Down the inside of turn number 1 and up into that 4th position for Charles Leclerc. Now it'll be Albon trying to run his teammate up in this lead group. He's on the tail of Lance Stroll now for that 5th position here in this Grand Prix. And you see Alonso meanwhile on the tail of Max Verstappen. Verstappen and Piastri, despite their issues and pit stops, they have come out in the 7th and 8th positions there. And that is going to be Alonso down the inside of Verstappen. Verstappen potentially carrying some after effects of his incident. He will lose that position to the Aston Martin of Alonso, up into 8th spot for him. Verstappen down into 9th position, going in the wrong direction very much so. Next up behind him will be Lewis Hamilton, but a bit of a gap then back to him in this race as they're getting very close now. Piastri having to look in his mirrors. Alonso getting awfully tight to the rear end of that McLaren, but for now, at least unable to make something happen as they head down the main straight once more here, and we've got a battle for the lead here. Actually, sorry, it's a battle for second place, my mistake. It is Antonelli having to defend from Sainz once again towards turn number 1. Sainz to the inside. Can he make this move stick? He does, and Antonelli does go a little bit wide there, gets back on the racetrack nice and quickly, and is able to fend off Leclerc as they headed into turn number 2. It is Sainz back into second spot, and can he again try and reel in the race leader? He's going to have his work cut out though. So we get into the later stages of this race. The Michelin tyres on the Mercedes cars should be working that little bit better here, but traffic is not helping our race leader in the slightest. Russell stuck in the dirty air of some lap traffic. That's Gabriel Bortoleto, who is going to block the leaders here down the main straight. Sainz going to try and take advantage. Antonelli's in the mix. A little bit of contact as he made his way past of banging wheels, but Antonelli crucially is into the lead of this Grand Prix, and if it were to finish as they are running, it will be Antonelli who has a 1-point lead going into the championship finale here, but Russell is right on his gearbox and trying to take that position straight back here. Sainz, a bit of shock there. He realised perhaps that he's in the middle of a very tense title fight. He is in third place now on their tail, as we see Antonelli feeling the pressure from George Russell with just a lap to go around this Willow Springs racetrack. They're going to be side by side, the two championship contenders. Kimi Antonelli forced wide once more. It's George Russell to the lead, and the championship leader is looking set to take home this Grand Prix victories. Meanwhile, we've got a battle pack for this 5th position. Alonso has reeled into the back of his teammate, and Alexander Albon there with Piastri also reeling in this group of drivers behind them. Looks like a lap car just behind them, not going to be interfering in this battle. There is actually Lando Norris is also not too far back ahead of Max Verstappen now in this race, all the way after starting at the back of the field. Norris only up at the 9th spot so far. The two Aston Martins running 5th and 6th here. But as we look back to the head of the field, it is Russell that comes over the rise in the lead of this race, and on a day which is going to prove crucial for the outcome of this championship. It is going to be George Russell who heads into the final corner for the final time with the lead of this Grand Prix. Antonelli took the lead briefly, but Russell was the man to beat today, and he is not to be beaten on this Sunday as he comes to the line as the championship leader, who will take 5 more points ahead of his rival. George Russell wins here. The US Grand Prix West is won by Mercedes in a dominant 1-2. Sainz contended, but not for long in that race. What a battle for victory we saw here today, folks. Unbelievable stuff from all of the front runners. And what a drive there. Lovely stuff to see that there. And wow, they've set us up a finale and a half there with just 9 points separating those top 2 drivers. It's going to take some work for Antonelli to win this championship, but crucially, if Antonelli is to win the finale and Russell doesn't come second, the championship will go the way of Antonelli. The young Italian driver still has a real chance at victory in this title fight, and you can tell he desperately wants that crown. But George Russell, he's been around in Formula 1 a while now. He is not going to give that position up easily. And especially knowing that this could be his one and only chance in the near future if he does move to a Red Bull or a Ferrari next year, neither of which look to be immediate threats for the championship. He could be in a spot of bother indeed. We'll have to wait and see how that one plays off. Behind the drivers that are battling it out for the championship, we had Carlos Sainz come home in 3rd position there, just ahead of Charles Leclerc. Lance Stroll ahead of his teammate Fernando Alonso. Alonso with a good recovery drive after a disappointing Friday. Behind them, we see Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, a pit stop in that race, and still finishes in 7th position. Not too bad for the winner last time out at Watkins Glen. Alexander Albon only in 8th position. Lando Norris recovers up to 9th place after starting all the way down in 17th. Verstappen 10th after his incident with Piastri, with Lewis Hamilton in 10th place ahead of Esteban Ocon. Sergio Perez, it comes home in the 13th position. Isaac Hadjar 14th ahead of Pierre Gasly, who finally gets Alpine's first point since their home Grand Prix all the way back in France. It is a point for them. Pierre Gasly just beating Arvid Lindblad to that position as the Racing Bulls run of form comes to a sad end for them. Valtteri Bottas in 17th position. Gabriel Bortoleto unable to add any more points to Audi's cause this season, with Liam Lawson in 19th position. Just one race remains in this championship, So let's have a closer look at how the championship standings look with just that single race remaining. Russell 9 points ahead of Antonelli. Norris now out of the fight with just a 44-point gap to the championship leader, with only 25 points available for a race win. Behind him, Carlos Sainz, they're just a point ahead of Oscar Piastri. Alexander Albon sits in the 6th position ahead of Charles Leclerc there. Lance Stroll just in behind them. Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso round out the top 10 there, with Lewis Hamilton still stuck outside of the top 10 positions. Isaac Hadjar in at 12th spot as he comes home just ahead of Esteban Ocon. 29 points for Ocon, now ahead of Behrman's just 25. Behrman's perhaps had the higher highs for the Haas team this season, but Ocon has been a very consistent point scorer, and you do not blame the Haas team for retaining him for next season. Behind them, we have Pierre Gasly there ahead of Arvid Lindblad, Franco Colapinto and Victor Martins level on points. Of course, Martins will be replacing Colapinto next season. Sergio Perez level on points with Jack Crawford, the Aston Martin wildcard. Conor Zilic, the Red Bull wildcard, is on 8 points. Gabriel Bortoletto and Valtteri Bottas, as well as Antonio Giovinazzi, all on 5 points each. Sebastian Vettel, Audi's wildcard, with 4 points. Then we see Liam Lawson, the full-time Racing Bulls KTM driver, with just 3 points to his name. Leonardo Fornaroli, McLaren's wildcard, just 3 points for him also. Nico Hülkenberg with 1 point over his season so far. And let's not forget that was that insane race all the way back in France when only 15 cars actually made the checkered flag. So a solitary 1 point, and came in some slightly questionable circumstances as well. Yuki Tsunoda is also on 1 point though in his wildcard appearance at Monza for the Racing Bulls KTM team. As we look over to the Constructors' standings, it is Mercedes who are officially crowned as the Constructors' champions for 2026. Perhaps no surprise there, they have been the team to beat all year long, and they have taken many wins on course to that title. Only 3 wins so far this season not claimed by Mercedes, and whilst they weren't claimed by a Mercedes team car, they were claimed by a Mercedes-powered car, which goes to show how well they have done. Behind them, McLaren sit in second, Williams still sitting pretty comfortable in that 3rd position there. Behind them, Aston Martin 4th ahead of Ferrari, Red Bull Ford there ahead of the Haas team, Alpine next up ahead of Racing Bulls KTM, Cadillac sit just 4 points behind KTM, with Audi still at the bottom of the standings, 4 points back. If they want to try and climb off of that position in the dead last spot, they need 4 or more points to jump ahead of Cadillac, and that's assuming Cadillac don't score any points with just 1 race left in the season. That is the Brazilian Grand Prix. I do hope you'll all join us then for that final round of this first season of Alternative Apex Project Pinnacle 2026. And if you can't tell by all the driver transfer news that we've already had this season, planning for 2027 is well and truly on its way. So I do hope you've enjoyed this season so far. 1 more race left in 2026, and then we turn our attention to 2027, where who knows what may happen. Next up though, Brazil. I'll see you all then. Goodbye.